Hello, everybody. Drasco here from 10knorm.com, where my main focus is to help guide heart-centered entrepreneurs under 10K months to transcend all of the blind spots that keep them from thinking, feeling, acting, and authentically marketing so they can normalize their own version of 10K months. And in today's episode, we have a Real Talk segment where I bring in a heart-centered entrepreneur who's on their way towards their 10K norm. And we have some real talk, and that real talk is about what's currently their biggest challenge towards their 10K norm. And in that conversation, we explore who they are, why they do what they do, and then live on the call, I get to help them get out of their own way on a challenge that they're currently experiencing towards their 10K norm. And for today's guest, we have Sam, the Miracle Man. And I love that he uses this name because, as you'll see through his story that we're going to dive much deeper into, he's had quite the interesting experience as far as life is concerned, because he was a very sick man for 37 years of his life, completely changed it all around, became healthy. And as he likes to say, it's proof that anything is possible. And he is the founder of Head Trash Anonymous, which is what he runs right now. And his main focus is helping burnt out, bottomed out individuals and souls find relief from their physical and mental suffering, which is right in tune with what we do here at 10K Norm. Maybe a little bit less on the physical side, more on the business side. But either way, Sam, thank you very much for being on here. Welcome to the show. How are you
Thanks,
doing?
Drasco. Great to be here today. I'm doing great. I'm alive above ground. Doesn't get any better than that.
I think it's hard to enjoy anything if that isn't the case. So I'm glad you're alive and kicking as well. I think a zombie segment would be a little bit weird. You know what I mean? So I think where I would love to dive into is the Miracle Man part of your story. I've read some of it on your website, so I don't want to do it like a disservice by kind of giving my own version of it. And I would love for you to dive deep into 37 years, a long time of being in physical pain and suffering. So why don't you just walk us through it? What happened behind that name and the suffering and all that other parts of your story?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting story. So at age 6, I was run over by a van. So that's where all the pain and suffering originated from, is that being run over by a van, doing the head trauma, the broken arm, the broken hip, spending, over a year in a hospital and rehab and all of that. So that's where it all began. But it was when I was 6 years old. So at 6 years old, I spent almost a lot of my time in isolation. So I never really developed the skills to be sociable, if you will. Those formative years, I didn't really have those. So I was really isolated and was kind of socially awkward growing up. And then I was an undiagnosed bipolar going through high school. So that was an adventure itself. That was all stemming probably from the head trauma that I suffered. So then I was then diagnosed as a bipolar until I was suicidal in my 20s with that bipolar. Then I was full of like all this self-criticism, all this self-hate. So I started to, have all these autoimmune diseases like psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis, which is psoriasis gets into the joints. Then I also was really stressed out and overwhelmed with life. So I had chronic migraines, and they would usually send me into the emergency room once in a while to get treatment for that. Then at the age of 37, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis after the worst migraine of my life. And within a few days, I was unable to walk and found myself in the hospital for about 3 weeks trying to figure out what was going on with me. They determined it was MS because MS is a process of exclusion. So after that diagnosis, they put me in rehab for a couple of weeks so I could learn to function as a disabled man. Um, yeah, so after that, I needed my cane. I had all this medicine, cooling vest because the body shuts down with MS. So anything above like 70 degrees, about 20 to, what is it, 20, whatever centigrade is, but yeah, 70 degrees Fahrenheit my body would really start to shut down. So I wore these cooling vests. Well, here I am today, after all that. I dealt with MS for 7 years, bipolar for over 20, and everything else for over 20 years, along with the injuries that I still have some residuals from the accident at 6 years old. my one leg is a little shorter than the other from that accident. So that's where that comes in. But yeah, so I dealt with that. Then within a period of, under 2 years, I healed myself, that I have no disabilities today, no medicine, no signs of disease. My doctors can't explain me. Only one doctor figured out what I did. I met Dr. Gabor Mate at a conference, and he questioned me, and he's like, "Oh, you stopped believing your mind." So that's my
Love
story
it.
in a nutshell.
Love it. And I love that like I don't I've listened to a lot of Gabor Mate's work. I haven't dived too deep into it. But actually I had somebody on the podcast as well who was either training under him or training with his course, etc. So I know um of him through that bit as well. And I love the fact that, well, okay, so I guess there's two things that I kind of want to just reflect back. So number one is, so that laundry list of things. I love how you just kind of like gloss it over. It's like, hey, this stuff happened and like now it's all good, right? I think it's almost, I don't know if you just repeated it a lot of times and like that's kind of like it just can become like a repetitive story, or you're glossing over it. But I think, people get kind of, mentally, emotionally, sometimes even physically paralyzed with like, just one out of those things. So, I'd like just acknowledge you for first overcoming all of that. And what I'd love to get into is, it kind of reminds me of like the Seinfeld episode with like the yada, yada, yada. It's like, I was sick for 37 years and yada, yada, yada. Now I'm good. Right. So I really like to go into like the yada, yada, yada part of here of like, what is it that you did? Because 2 years in comparison to 37 years is like exponential change. So if you're cool with it, I'd love to just kind of dive
Yeah,
into
I like
that.
to give I usually don't like to spend like 10, 15 minutes initially going through all the stuff that I went through and how I accomplished. I like some of my 30-second story, because I've done that before where we can really dive in and go through all the elements and everything that I experienced and everything I dealt with, and then the quick turnaround. And that was just the quick 1 minute version, but I can talk about any one of those topics for 15, 20 minutes and really dive deep into it. But I don't think we have a 4 or 5 hour time slot here to go through all of that mud.
Well, I mean, listen, we'll go as it happens. Like I have no issues with it. And the reason why I just, I guess, to give you the context is so much of this podcast and so much of the 10K norm program and kind of why I'm building all of this and moving in this direction is because one of the things that I've repeated often here and in my coaching is, we seldom have marketing problems as much as we have personal problems that show up in our marketing. Right. And so it's really like you said, I didn't believe my mind. And oftentimes that's also what comes up in the business bit, that there are narratives that we attach to, there's unnecessary suffering that we attach to that gets in the way of the things getting done, or the clear path towards getting things done. Just kind of complicates it. So when I hear your story of like it's one thing to not be able to execute on a marketing plan. It's another thing when you have like physical ailments really pulling you down, and yet the source of it is your mind, or the perpetuator is your mind. I'd love to just get your reflections back on that, and what is it that you did to move through that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds good.
So yeah, I mean, with any one of them, because you said the 2 year turnarounds, like what was the inflection point of that, 2 year pit that started it, and how did you go through it?
Well, you have to realize when you have multiple sclerosis, I don't know how familiar you are with MS, but one of the things with multiple sclerosis is chronic fatigue. It's really hard to do anything because it's a neurological condition. It affects the myelin sheath in the brain and the spinal column. So when you looked at my MRIs at that time, it looked like I had Swiss cheese in my head, all these lesions and scar tissues and all of that. But the last scan I had was mostly was clean. My doctor was puzzled, but but the thing is, I had this really I went from basically fine to like unable to walk within like 2-3 days from the multiple sclerosis. But it left me with very chronic fatigue, and it was very hard to function. And that's what I mean with heat and that disease, the fatigue gets even worse. So during the summertime, I'd frequently become a hermit. I wouldn't go outside. And if I went into a place like a restaurant that was above 70 degrees, I would have to go wear a cooling vest to actually eat in that restaurant, or it'd be actually very hard to swallow the food or anything, because life became very hard to function with that. And I was really in bad shape with that. But what was happening for me? So I was dealing with this chronic fatigue. So after work, I was holding down a job because I worked for a pharmaceutical, and they were pretty understanding with that. So I was able to, well, work from home when I needed to. And then when I did go to work, I'd just be really fatigued afterwards. So afterwards, I would go home and literally be a couch potato. I really just sit there and watch TV and just veg. But I would watch anything and everything on TV because it was like a 4 to 5 hour nightly ritual of just just sitting in front of the TV. But one of the things I used to watch was, ghost hunting shows. But I didn't know if it was real or fake. It's TV, so I had no idea. So I saw like a tweet from one of the ghost hunters, hey, we're having this event in Philadelphia where I was living at the time. And I know it was a Fort Mifflin, and I was like, oh, I can probably go to that for an hour, hour and a half before the fatigue gets really bad. So I even got a hotel near Fort Mifflin, so I went to drive back, because driving at nighttime was always an adventure with me because my eyesight wasn't so great with MS. Um, so so long story short, I did some research on Fort Mifflin. I saw the most active location, and I was like, okay. So let me go to the casemates. That's where the place is most active. It's basically where they held, like, the prisoners from the Civil War were held at the casemates by this fort in Philadelphia. And before that was, the fort that was there to protect the city from the English. So it really had a lot of action, if you will, at this fort. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the casemates. So all these groups went into different areas. I just put myself in a new group that went into the casemates first, because that's where I wanted to experience, to see if there was a real, fake, what was going on here. So for the first 15 minutes in the casemates, there was nothing going on. It was kind of boring. And then somebody put out their flashlight, like one of these little mag light twist flashlights. And they said, turn this flashlight on, turn this flashlight off. I don't know why that there, ignore that. Um, so they said, turn this flashlight on, it went on. Turn this flashlight off, it went off. But me being the skeptic saying, hey, well, that's not my flashlight. So I had a little flashlight with me too. So I put out my flashlight and was doing the same thing. I'm like, okay, there's something here. Then a few minutes later, it felt like somebody sat next to me I couldn't see. Then I just felt this overwhelming sense of dread after that. I'm like, I don't know why this is, I see what it is. Let me just shut this off. It's annoying.
Sure.
Oh, come on, shut this off. It's a telemarketer. I just see on my phone telemarketer, so you got to shut that off. I don't know. I should make a habit to shut my phone off when I'm trying to do these. But anyway, so at the casemates, so I basically had some experiences as a casemate I could not explain. Flashlight going on and off, somebody sitting next to me I couldn't see, and feeling this overwhelming sense of dread. So then after that, after we've done the casemates, I went to a different area for a little bit. Nothing was happening. It was kind of boring. So I went back to the hotel. My cooling vests were melting at that time, and I was getting tired. So I went back to the hotel for the night. But I was always very curious. I was like, all right, what did I experience there? So it's like, well, who talks to ghosts? Who talks to spirits, supposedly? Mediums. So I read a book from a medium trying to figure out, understand what was going on. But that time my eyesight was very poor. I couldn't read like 4 or 5 pages before I would get a migraine. So my eyesight was very poor, very difficult for me to read. But managed to get through this book. But at one point they talked about meditation. And they talked about the benefits of meditation. Like one of the benefits, I forget all the benefits they listed, but one of the benefits that really jumped out at me was inner peace. I was like, I need inner peace. I was so stressed out, so overwhelmed. They didn't really even talk about, how to meditate. There's a little, like a page, maybe a page and a half on meditation. That was it, on how they get into their space, basically, to do this communication work. And that was enough for me. It was like, meditation means inner peace. Okay, I can do that. So that night, I just sat there for 5 minutes. That was my practice. I didn't know how to meditate. I just sat there, closed my eyes, relax. But I was in the impression that meditation means you stop thinking. So initially for the first 2 weeks, I was like, stop thinking. When the mind would go off on its tangent, I'd be like, stop thinking, stop thinking. Then it dawned on me like within 2 weeks, like, wait a second, that's a thought chasing a thought. So I was like, so that was my first realization that thought chasing thought. Okay. Then I realized too from that was, wait a second, if it's a thought chasing a thought, then I'm not my thoughts. If I'm not my thoughts, then who am I? That's what I sat with, after that. So that was my initial practice, just sitting there for 5 minutes a day. When the mind would get busy, I would just come back to like, where are my feet? Where are my hands? I just bring myself back to the present moment. I didn't know what I was doing. It's like, I know I'm not my thoughts. I just come back here, come back here, come back here. So I was still doing like 5 minutes and 5 minutes twice a day, then 10 minutes twice a day. It was like a really simple, present practice or mindfulness practice. I didn't know what it was at that time. I didn't have a teacher. I just read this few pages in the book and off I went, following my own thing. So I never had a spiritual teacher the whole time I was doing this. So about into 3 months into this practice, I was still dealing with that question. I'm not my thoughts, then who am I? Then this intuitive voice, or I guess you could call it, after meditation one night said perfect spirit. I'm like, that's it. I'm perfect spirit. You're perfect spirit. Everyone listening is perfect spirit, or consciousness or spirit or soul, whatever you want to call it. That we're not this body, we're not this mind, we're not these thoughts. So after I heard perfect spirit, I just had this deep sense that all was well, all is well, and that all fear, any stories about my health were simply gone. I just knew my health challenges were over at that point. So at that point, I just started to listen to, like, my mind got really quiet at that point after I heard perfect spirit and I had that sense of all is well. And so my mind got very quiet, but the intuitive voice, I guess you could say, came online. And I just started to follow my intuitive voice, my instinctual voice to go do this, go do that. And so over the period of, well, I guess about 16 months of it hearing perfect spirit, about 16 months, well, 3 months to hear perfect spirit and about another 16, 17 months of actually following perfect spirit to heal. So after hearing that voice, 16 months later, no medicine, no signs of disease, no cane, no nothing. It all went away. Just just marching to my own drummer, I guess you could say, just following my own intuitive voice. And that's where I really help people today, is that all this noise up here is really head trash. And we just need to throw it away and remember who we really are. So that's really the mission of head trash, is get rid of the garbage and remember who you are. Then learn to trust that intuitive voice and how it expresses itself. That the intuitive voice doesn't give you instructions, it says do this, do that. One time, it came to me like, do yoga. So okay, I guess I'll do yoga. So I drove by yoga students. I just knew that was my yoga studio. So I signed up there. When I began yoga, it was very difficult. I would fall over a lot, but within 3 months, I didn't need my cane anymore. So I was still weaning off all my medicine. I was taking 13 pills a day. I was taking a daily injectable. I was taking all this stuff, but I was slowly weaning off of that. And my doctors were very concerned, especially my psychologist, because I was a bipolar, a suicidal bipolar. But I just had this sense that all is well. So I don't really recommend people just, go off to all their medicines like I did. It might not be the best thing for you, but it just felt right for me. So he wasn't very supportive of me going off of that. So eventually I figured my doctors weren't supportive. So I stopped seeing them. I just kept in touch with one doctor who helped me get off of one medication. He was the only doctor who was supportive of me getting off medication, but he helped me get off of benzo. I was really having difficulties getting off of benzo because it was so addictive. And he gave me the steps to get off of that. So I did that. And here I am today, a medical miracle that I don't have these. And the name actually came after I wrote my first book, and one of the reviewers called me the Miracle Man.
Wow. I mean, I love that story. And there's so much details that even reflected back to me as reminders, as teachings of, what I want to remember, what I want to embody, especially from that perspective of, the perfect spirit, right? Like that is the essence of our wholeness. And then there is the humaning that goes on top of it that oftentimes just gets in the way. Um, so my follow-up question to that is, and I guess, okay, contextually, so for example, like my grandmother, she suffers from shingles, right? She's had it for years. And that is something that, the doctors and her own belief is, this is incurable. It'll be here until I pass away. And whenever she talks about it, because you mentioned like the myelin sheaths and the damage that your nerves had, or at least I guess you're talking about your neurotransmitters as well. But does MS also affect the nerves, or is it only in the brain?
It's the myelin sheaths that surround the nerves.
Okay, got it.
It's the white matter.
Got it. So yeah, and I know when my grandmother talks about the nerve damage as a result of the shingles and the subsequent pain, she's like, "Oh, like the nerves are damaged. There's nothing that can be done to repair the nerves, so therefore, I'm just going to continue suffering, for the rest of my alive, days or whatever." And to hear you speak about, okay, so I tuned into something that was truer than that. And I don't know if you had a practice with regards to like, okay, like I'm imagining the nerves healing, etc. But no, okay. So I guess for me, it's kind of like, how did you do that? Because I know, like, I'm not in my grandmother's position, I'm not in your position, and it's easy to speak from, this position where I'm not suffering from it. But it was always my sentiment of like, I know you are in pain, but I feel like so much of what you're doing is also perpetuating your pain. And I just like your reflections based off of that, and how did you change that relationship with, like a once nerves are damaged, they're damaged. It's kind of the narrative that's always expressed. So I'd love your thoughts and reflections on that.
Yeah, so the thing is, though, I was never focused on healing. I was focused on inner peace. And peace was the energy of transformation, because we have to realize what we focus on expands. So if you're focusing on healing, you're saying there's something wrong with the body, and it actually keeps that in place. So I usually I don't really like to call my healing circles, because the term healing itself creates a block. So I like to say the circle, but I have to put like the end quotes, healing circle. But when people mention healing, they're admitting that, hey, there's something wrong with my body. And by focusing on what's wrong with the body, it stays in place. So it's really just focusing on peace and just being at peace with how the body is in this moment. And the body knows how to self-correct if we get out of the way. It's like you do a paper cut on your finger. You don't need to worry about it. It's going to take care of it. But yet, if you were to stare at that paper cut and say, heal, heal, the paper cut will probably change into an infection, because you're giving it so much of your attention. It's going to magnify and expand that, hey, I'm going to send their energy to this, that there's something wrong with this, so it will expand and probably create an infection or something along that lines. And when that's what I'm seeing people going to all these healers, and even these big famous healers, and they have all these testimonials, but you look at the testimonials to the size of their audience, I imagine only maybe 0.5% to 1% actually heal, because they're so focused on healing, they're keeping that in place. And I imagine there's a small subset that are able to move through those healing beliefs and, just really persevere and keep pushing and pushing and pushing. But it seems like a really difficult way to heal is to really force healing, because it's the mind trying to force, but the perfect spirit is the power.
Got it. So it's not about keeping the perspective or the vantage point of, okay, I'm now going to heal. It is actually just even going beyond that, almost like transcending the healing and just realigning with what is whole, like what is already there, what wants to surface. Um, And I guess that there's the element of surrender, right? Like I have to surrender that, whatever is going to happen as a result of that connection will, right? And even as I'm talking about it right now, it's hard for me to separate, well, I'm going to transcend it so that I can heal. It's like you're still kind of attached to the healing. So how did you work through that on your own?
I just focused on peace, being here in this moment and being at peace with this moment. That was it. That's what they say in the Bhagavad Gita. Focus on the task at hand and not the fruits of your labor. So the task for me was stay present, stay in peace. It was that simple. Just stay present, stay at peace. Notice how stress, worry, anxiety is mind stuff. And you just have to realize that spirit never worries, never is in stress. It's just accepting this moment as it is.
I love that. It's almost like that sentiment of like just surrendering to divine timing, right? Surrendering to divine period, even beyond timing, because I think you're also aligning the timing with like when is this thing going to happen. And it's really actually cool for me to see my own resistance to that, almost like the simplicity of it. Like it cannot be that simple because I know our brains always like to make things more complicated. So did that ever come up, during your journey?
No, because that's why you tell people now the mind makes things way too complicated. My practice was so simple. It's just that was it. Just focus on being here, being at peace in this moment, and just really listening to that intuitive voice and following those steps. But once in a while, the mind, resists, and that came up for me as well when it was time to get off the MS medication, for example. Because it was a daily injectable. It took a lot to get onto this medicine. So when it was time to get off of this, the mind starts questioning, well, do you really want to go off this MS medication? It seems to be helping you. Do you really want to do this? It was so hard to get onto. Like all these kind of stories were coming up. When it was time to get off the MS medication, I know it was time to let it go, but the mind was still creating resistance. And but there's this rare side effect that happens with this medicine that I never had in like this 7 years of taking this medication. It's like rapid heartbeat, shallow breath. That's the side effect that would come also with this medicine. So it was time for me to get off of it. I was getting that reaction almost every day till I stopped the medication.
So it's kind of like reality telling you, okay, like just you don't need this anymore, right? Like just push it away.
Yeah, so it made well, I guess you could say like spirit made it impossible for me to take this medicine anymore.
It was like you have had enough. We don't need this anymore.
Right, because you can't live with that side effect of rapid heartbeat and shallow breath. It's not good for the body. So it's like you can't tolerate this medicine anymore. It's done.
Interesting. So by the time you actually came to that point, it was like, again, going back to, vernacular speak, like you were actually like probably 90% healed. So the quote unquote medicine was actually just like it was just getting in the way.
Right.
Would that be accurate? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where spirit was, I suppose I can say this, where spirit was just helpful at times. It's like I just always had the sense that all is well, but the mind would always kind of create these stories. And the one big story I can think of during that time was getting off the MS medication. That's the only time that really slowed me down and really got me to ponder and think about it. But spirit just stepped in and just made it impossible for me to take this medicine. And then I even talked to my neurologist, and he's like, "Yeah, you can't take that anymore."
Wow. So one other question, I guess, as far as all that is concerned, when you did begin to experience the, quote unquote positive changes, right? Or the realignment with your fullest self, was there a part of you, or was your mind like, oh my God, it's working, like this is so exciting? Or it was just that, right, I'm just at peace and this is what ends up happening when you're at peace?
Now, I think the really like the big aha moment that this is working was, like I said, the journey was about 16 months. So about a year into it, you know, the next summer, the summer after, I said, well, it's going to be 100, it's going to be near 100 degrees today. Let me go outside without my cooling vest. Let's see what happens. Because typically when I walked outside, when it was like, 90s, I walk outside, instant migraine, instant body shutting down without my cooling vest. So I said, okay, let's go test this. Let me go outside, stand in this hot sun without my cooling vest, and let's see what happens. So I did that. No migraine, body not shutting down.
And
So
how
then
did
it's
that
like,
feel?
it was like, wow, it doesn't bother me anymore, this heat. It's like a confirmation.
I love it. Right. At that point, it's undeniable, right? So that's amazing. I love it, and I thank you for sharing it. In this instance, selfishly, because it's such a reminder. Right. I was just thinking even before this particular thing, because again, context. So this whole podcast was bred out of being an accompaniment to the actual program, right? That's why they shared the same name, and I wanted to explore the same subjects and kind of get it out into the world in a different way, not just be involved solely in the clients that I have. And I started realizing these narratives of like, okay, like this is just starting. This is the first iteration of it. Like we need to just kind of keep going. Like it'll get the traction it needs, et cetera, et cetera. But it was just like you sharing it back with me. It's like, well, I am where I am. Like I am here in this moment, like with you. We are having this podcast. And it's like, well, what is actually amiss? Like nothing other than the thoughts that are here, right? And as always, right, it's our clients are always our best reflections, what we need to work on, because I have these conversations all the time, right? Like you just started a thing, you had some traction with it, like it is the repetition of who you are, where you want to be, that moves you towards it. So that was kind of my reminder. And yeah, I would just like to get your take on that reflection as far as like, is that what you see in your day-to-day experience of sharing this?
Yeah, it's just a matter of just allowing things to happen. And that's really hard for the mind to accept, that life is just unfolding as it needs to unfold. And the mind's constantly creating this interference. So it's just a matter of seeing the interference that it's creating and just trying to be, it's always trying to find that middle way, between head and heart. It's trying to find that middle way. And that's probably one of my biggest challenges, I guess you could say, today, is finding that middle way, because I can live in spirit and be in that state as all is well. And this is why, when I had my, after my healing, I was like, well, I need to quit my job and I need to go do my healing center. Well, I had my healing center, but I was in this place that all is well, and whatever happens, happens. But that doesn't generate money, if you will, to provide the rent, the income, and all of that stuff. So that's always been, since my healing, it's always been, how do I find that way? How do I live? How do I live a spirit and yet in this human body? And how do I navigate that middle way? Because I can seem really detached because all is well. It's just the mind creating stories. But then I know, like Eckhart Tolle calls it, the doing energy. And there's not a lot of doing energy with me because all is well. So it's it's trying to find that balance. And that's where even Eckhart Tolle sat on the bench for 2, 3, 4 years before he did anything. He just, when he had his epiphany, that he wasn't the thinker, he just sat on the bench for a while. And that's where I am today. It's like all is well and life is unfolding as it needs to unfold.
So have you ever come across, either in your work or in yourself, the sentiment of like the spiritual bypassing? Because I do see that from time to time where people just, well, just get, focus on the positive and just, I don't want any negativity, and it's just like there's none of the facing of what needs addressing. um I've sometimes found that kind of like focusing solely on that can be a slippery slope both for myself and for other individuals. So I'd like to know, like, have you encountered that, and what is the missing perspective there?
Yeah, so that's the biggest thing I could see from that, is like when I had my spiritual center back in 2014, 2015, was there was no doing energy. It really wasn't bypassing. It was like, well, I can't afford this anymore. Okay, so I guess I'll get a job. It wasn't like, it wasn't really like a denial, like just sitting in an empty space and just waiting them for me to kick me out because I can't afford to pay my rent. I found somebody to take over the lease, and I went back to work. And it was just like, okay, that's just the way reality is. I wasn't in denial of the moment. And that's where I'm always, trying to live that middle way for me, that I have all these great gifts, but then, where's the doing energy for this? It's a little lacking because it was so ingrained in me, during my healing process, that all is well and that things just unfold as they need to unfold. So it's just a matter of tapping into that space for business. And I don't know. I don't know why it just hasn't really clicked yet, if you will. It just hasn't unfolded. Like I can do some pretty interesting things. This is like I don't do discovery calls anymore. Like, because I do discovery calls, they're healed right on that one call. So I was like, well, I can't do that anymore because I don't have any business if I do that.
Interesting. So my immediate reflection is that, well, why not just charge for that call to begin with?
Yeah, that's the thing that comes to me as well, that I could charge for that. And I don't know what it is, but for me, it just feels like I like to do things through donation. It just resonates better with me. Donations. I don't know. It just feels like, yeah, that's one of the things, that the money part I haven't really figured out. And it's just sort of like, I'm okay with donations. They're okay. But because to me, there's no lack in the universe. So all is well, there's no lack. So it's also part of finding that middle way, because nothing is lacking. If this doesn't work, I know I can get resources this other way or this other way, that there's always resources available. And if they don't come this way, they'll come another way.
I agree with you. I agree with the abundant nature of the universe, and that there will be a way. So what stuck out for me is when you said, okay, well, I prefer donations, and I prefer them because I want to continue being in this space, that there's something will always, come up, etc. And I don't want to reinforce that there's no lack, because there is no lack. My reflection back to you would be, well, aren't you lacking in the business funds that you need?
Yeah, well, then I look like, okay, well, if spirit's really in charge, you could say, if we are ultimately spiritual beings, then life is unfolding as it should. Am I not supposed to do this business? It's one of the things I struggle with. What was the point of my healing? Is it just to inspire people that all things are possible? Um, that's another question that I toy with once in a while. Like, what's the point of this profound healing if I'm not meant to help others heal? So it's one of these other paradoxes that I see. If this was if it was really meant to be a healer, then people would be banging down my door and there would be no lack. But the things like when I was in my spiritual center, the funds weren't there to keep the doors open. So it's always been like a paradox that all is well, but yet the resources aren't here in that avenue.
So what's interesting to me about that particular dialogue was, my question essentially wasn't open-ended. It was a yes or no question. It was, there's no lack in the universe, but there is lack in your business funds. And where your mind went to answer that was basically a whole other topic, which was, well, if I'm meant to be a healer, then I
Right.
should be healing, etc.
These are things I just ponder about. Yeah, my musings.
Okay. So I guess my reflection back would be, why do you think you didn't answer in a yes or no manner?
Because I had no yes or no answer. It was just amusing that I was like, yeah, it's an interesting topic, and you know, if the funds are lacking, then maybe it's not a path that I'm to explore. It's just there to be, to inspire people that all things are possible, and just to share that message out there. And there's something else that hasn't revealed itself. Maybe that healing is there to open up a different door. I don't know. It's this, I'm just in this I don't know space, which is, the mind's always in this place of, and I'm okay with not knowing. That's the thing. I'm okay with not knowing, because spirit doesn't give you the plans. It's just like, do this, do that. And that's where I am. So this is where I worked with other coaches in the past before, and you know, nothing has really come about. So it's just random musings.
Sure. And that's totally fine. They're all welcome. Um, the sentiment of all is well. So even now, when the funds are lacking, all is well. Is that still accurate?
Yeah, it's still all is well. From the place of spirit, all is well. And that's trying to find that middle ground. Well, all is not well if I can't put food on the table, if I can't put, food, roof over my head. But that's the one thing, that I'm not in the mindset that I must do this, that I must do that. It's like there's resources all around. It's like, oh, I can get resources here, I can get resources there. And I just don't have blinders on like when I had my healing and of the spiritual center, I was like, yes, I must do this. I must get this message into the world. And then when that didn't work out, it's like, well, was that really a spiritual thing, or was it more of a mental thing that I need to get this into the world? And that's where my musing is today, right now, is like, I can sit in meditation and people can have all these profound experiences. So you can just be in this place of perfect spirit, and they get healing, they get whatever they need from it, and it's fine. There's just no lack. That's the big thing for me, is that there's just no lack. That's the best way I can explain it.
And would all be well if you were in abundance financially?
Yeah, like it's from the place of spirit, all is well always.
So what about from your perspective, not spirit's perspective? Because it's not spirit that needs money to operate, it's you.
Right. Well, right now I'm not hungry. I have a roof over my head. Um, yeah, so all is well. I'm able to pay the bills. All is well. Some donations come in here and there. That's good, but there's no lack of. I can just find resources when I need resources. They show up.
That's fair. So would all be well if you had excess, not just what you needed.
Yeah, if there was access, then I could be free, I guess you could say, and I can go give talks in person like I did it once. But we're in this new COVID reality, so everything's through Zoom now. But it's just it'd be nice to have the freedom to be where I want to be, and just know that I'm supporting people wherever that I can be available to support more people, and to let them know, that there's another way out.
Right. So that was the answer to what you would do if you had excess. The original question was, would all be well if you had access?
Yeah,
Excess.
yeah, yeah. It would be great if I had access. Then I can, better help myself, better help other people that are maybe in a situation where they need help. And that's the thing. It just feels like one of the callings is just to help people, and money is secondary. But on the human level, money is necessary to feed, put a roof for myself. It would be nice to have an abundance of that in my healing work, so I could do more of that, get the message out there on a greater scale. Maybe have actually a team to create all this content for me, so I don't have to do everything as a one-man show. That would be nice. Because for me, the doing energy isn't there, which sort of reminds me like Eckhart Tolle, he could never do all the creative work. His thing is just deliver the message, and he has like a team of 15 to 20 people that do everything else.
Sure. And that's great for him,
Yep.
right? But at this point, we're going to focus on you because that's the only thing that is present.
Hmm.
So if you were to try that statement, all is well if I have an abundance of money, could you say it right now?
Yeah, all is well if I have an abundance of money, because no matter what, all is well. Just it would allow the human experience to impact more humans. If I had an excess of money, I could be more places doing more things to help more people.
Great. So try it again without justification and with just in and itself how it
Hmm.
lands. So all is well if I have an abundance of money.
Yep, all is well if I have an abundance of money.
Okay. So how do you feel when you say that?
It feels fine, but I can say all is well when I don't have money.
Great. So then what do you need money for?
It's just to provide for the basic needs.
So is all well if you can't provide for your basic needs?
If I can't provide for my basic needs, then I'm not listening to that deeper part within me that knows how to get those resources, that I'm not in a place where, I'm not starving, I have a roof over my head.
Right. But you're already there.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm already here.
So why should anything change if that's what you're good with?
Yeah, because that's the one thing that's one of my musings is that if I have more time, then I can help more people.
Well, do you need more time or do you need more money?
Um, well, that's an interesting paradox because if you had more money, it would free up time to do other things. You wanted to depend on other things to generate resources.
Agreed. So would things be more well if you had more money?
Yes, if the purpose was to help more people, then more money is perfect.
And who decides that purpose?
Ultimately, it's up to us.
Who decides that as far as the context that we're talking about?
That would be me, because we're ultimately the master of our lives.
Correct. So you are a healer. You clearly want to help people. I don't think anybody can deny that. You have the capability, the proof, the experience to do it. The thing that is a limiting factor to making that happen is the very thing you keep repeating is secondary. As long as it covers my needs, everything's all good right now. Why would it show up?
Right. Well, it wouldn't show up because
Well, it isn't showing up.
right, it isn't showing up. Right. It isn't showing up because it's not needed in this moment. But if I really focus my intention, yes, it is needed so I can have a greater impact and help more people than
So
it
it is
is
both
needed.
needed and unneeded at the same time.
Right.
So do you think with that split energy, it has a place to go?
No, of course not. It's really about, setting that clear intention of, setting that clear intention. Yes, I need this. I'm not meant to do these other things, that my healing was for a reason to show people and to demonstrate to them how they can heal themselves. And that's what the world really needs more of because of all this COVID fear that's going around right now, that they need a strong immune system. So yeah, there's reasons behind it.
Certainly. And if you had not gone through all of the 37 years that made you the miracle man, would you be able to actually be a healer?
No, because I'm living proof that, that all things are possible.
Correct. So it is not your words that are inspiring, it is your lived experience that is inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to money, all you have are words, contradictions, musings, and split energy.
Mm-hmm.
If you had that in your healing journey, do you think you'd be in a place to actually help people?
Yeah, with split energy, no, because split energy gets in the way. This is why, one of my healing circles, I'm in that pure energy. But and that's always come down to that finding that middle way. That's what always been my struggle since I healed myself. How do I live as a human, but yet know myself as perfect spirit?
Well, define middle way.
Well, finding that balance between the spiritual realms and the human realms, if you will.
Okay. So you found that balance in physical healing.
Yes, I haven't found that balance in money, business, whatever you wish to call it.
Okay. So do you think maintaining the same stances you've been maintaining thus far will help you find that balance?
No, it's just what's coming to me that I just need to be really clear, setting those intentions. I need resources for my healing, not only provide for my needs and to help others heal themselves.
Correct. So the reason why I keep going back through these questions and I keep kind of throwing it back your way, just to kind of give you where my mind is going at while you speak, it's without the struggles you went through, nobody would take you seriously as far as a healer.
Right.
It is because of that vast amount of knowledge and experience, like lived experience, humanly lived experience, not like spirit lived through you, but
Mm-hmm.
humanly lived experience, that people take what you say seriously.
Mm-hmm.
They are also matching exactly what you put out as far as the financial bit. Your
Mm-hmm.
main limiter right now, right? I think from what I'm hearing is how you're viewing the money that is here. Because what's abundantly clear is that there, as long as there's enough for me to survive, all is well. What I'm trying to get you to see is that all is well, even if you have $1 million in the bank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You are the one that chooses all is well.
Right.
So if you are the one that chooses all is well, and all is well when I'm just getting by, and all is well if I have $1 million in the bank, then what's the choice?
Right. It's obviously if you had $1 million in a bank, you can just help more people. There's more resources. They impact more people because resources do allow it more impact.
Exactly. In your instance, the money is an amplifier,
Right. I like
but the
that.
choice, yeah,
Yeah, I like that. That resonates with me. Money's an amplifier. That is definitely true.
it is neutral in and of itself. But in your instance, and what it is that you do, you're not going to get $1 million in the bank so you can drive around a Ferrari. You're going to use that $1 million to, pay off what you need to pay off to live, and the rest will go into amplifying your message so that the people that are helpless with their suffering can come to you.
Right.
That is abundantly clear. What I invite you to consider right now is that you have a choice. The choice is I'm going to experience all as well with scarcity, or I'm going to make the choice to experience all as well in abundance. That can be the amplification to everything that I want to make happen in this world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. Money is an amplifier for me. It's not, I don't need more money to buy more stuff. I need more money to increase the message, to amplify.
Correct. how does that land with you?
Perfect.
And in terms of your relationship to receiving more of it, how does it land?
Great. I can see that, I can see that give me the impulse to go into meditation with that money as an amplifier and just keep going with that energy, that vibration, and that will attract more abundance so I can amplify that messaging and get out there in a more impactful way.
100%. So just to kind of do that through a test run, we kind of started this whole conversation with me saying, if you just charged for what was a discovery call before, what would happen? How does that question land for you now?
Yeah, now if I well, now it wouldn't be really a discovery call, a mini healing session, if you will, and there would be a fee associated with that.
100%. And I'm happy to hear that that actually resonates. And I didn't want to bring this up at the beginning because I didn't know kind of where you stood on all of these things. But what I would also invite you to consider is during that 37 years, you've seen a whole lot of doctors, they just kept giving you pills, etc.
Mm-hmm.
In year 25, if somebody would have come along and said, hey, for X amount, I'll spend an hour with you to do a mini healing, what have you got to lose? Would you have taken it?
Um, and that part of my journey, no, because I was not aware of the spiritual realms. I was always under the belief systems that my doctors knew best, even though I was getting sicker and sicker, because that was my mentality. And unfortunately, I see that a lot today. People hear about my healing, they look at me and say, I can never do that. And they don't approach me.
Okay, that's totally fair and makes sense. So let me rephrase it. If during those 2 years of your transitions, you said it was like 3 months and then like 16 months. So
Mm-hmm.
let's just say on month 8, somebody like you came along and was like, hey, for X amount, I can accelerate your healing time and make better what you're already doing. This is how much it's going to cost. Are you interested?
It'll be a different conversation. They'd be more open to it. Yes.
Okay. And would you think something like that would have helped your 8-month self at that point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The accelerate.
How much would that be worth it to you to save another or to shave off another 8 months because somebody can just guide you even better?
Right. Yeah. You can't really put a price on that because you can't really put a price on health.
Well, I would argue that you actually can.
Mm-hmm. You could, because like if I look at my own health expenses during that time, just if I think back, my injectable MS medication was extremely expensive, and I had good insurance, but I was paying about 4 to 5 thousand a year just in a medicine copay for that medicine.
Correct. So if after 3 sessions with you, I could get off of that, would that be worth $2,000?
Right. It would be worth it. You're spending 2,000 to stop spending 5,000. Plus, you get your health back.
That's exactly what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah.
What you have is the gift to be able to deliver that to people, but your relationship with the receiving of the financials of it, because you were more than welcome to give it. Like I'll pay $5,000 for drugs, but to receive 2,000 for something that legit made you a medical miracle now seems ludicrous. Yet that $2,000, you're probably going to take 70-80% of it and reinvest it into that amplification. That to me sounds like all is weller if you do that
Yeah.
piece.
Yes, exactly. I agree. Yeah. So, yeah, I think I need to market that better. Like, over my course of my 37 years, my personal out of pocket that insurance didn't cover would probably exceeded, $75,000 with all my copays and stuff like that.
So not only does health have a price, I would say, disease also has a price.
Hmm. Yeah, because when you're stressed out and overwhelmed with life, it's difficult to be motivated.
Correct.
And you're not going to be taking those higher paying jobs. If anything, you're going to be taking lower paying jobs to get rid of the stress of sometimes that comes with the higher paying jobs.
Correct. So when you look back through, accepting money for those mini healing sessions, how does it land now?
Oh, it's great because yeah, it gives me money to reinvest in amplification.
Correct. So does this feel complete for you? Is there something else that keeps popping up?
No, that's really the message. Money is an amplification for me. I never really viewed it that way. Never really expressed it that way to me. It's not about stuff for me. It's about getting the message out there.
Correct. Right. And what you're going to run into later on, because you are dealing with this. And just for context, so I owned a weight loss, like a brick and mortar weight loss center for 10 years. And we dealt with a lot of individuals who, had like lifelong struggles with weight. So once you make this transition and you go into it, charging and being okay with receiving, you are going to run into, well, now there's a lot of people that like, they say they want to be helped, but what they really want is relief. But that's a whole different problem. But I'm just kind of giving you a little foreshadowing preview that will be kind of the next mindset shift you will be asked to make, that will require some fine tuning. But I think even from what I'm hearing, just like your energy talking about is different, right? It's not stuck in that I don't know quicksand where you just loop and loop and loop, right? In this instance, your mind hijacks your biggest strength, which is all is well. Right? I always say like our biggest strengths become our first distortions,
Mhm.
right? Because all is well when I don't have money ignores the fact that all can be well even when I have a lot of it,
Right.
right? And that blocks you from realizing, well, what if I did have $1 million? What if I did ask for more? So many things open up. And in your instance, like you said, I'm not interested in the stuff, I'm interested in the amplification. Imagine what you can do when you take that same focused, all is well energy towards abundance and expansion. What kinds of things can happen.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
Love it. All right. Well, I mean, if you feel complete, I'm good with where this went. So, anything else that's coming up for you?
No, I like that perspective, that it just reframes things. Yeah, yeah, all can be weller, if the funds are there, they get out in a bigger way and expand.
Absolutely. Well, it was a pleasure having you on and going through that. Just to kind of wrap things up, where can people find you? Where can people get in contact with you? The floor is yours.
Yeah, you can find me over at Head Trash Anonymous. That's my website. You can find me on YouTube as Sam the Miracle Man. I'm on TikTok as well, and TikTok has been an interesting challenge for me. Get spiritual messages in 15, 30 seconds, these little profound nuggets. And somebody even comments like, you have all these videos, I can only take one a day. They're so intense and so to the point. Because yeah, that's one thing that's been really good for me is TikTok. Can I get my spiritual message in a more concise way? And so they can find me there. And I do daily YouTube videos as Sam the Miracle Man. And I usually share meditations as well to move us through different points where we may be stuck on a life purpose or even healing. And I talk about, the rules of healing. Don't talk about healing. That's the main rule with healing. Don't talk about healing, but you can find me. I'm around them. I'm easily accessible and easy to find.
Awesome. Love it. Well, we'll include all those notes in the show notes. So thank you very much for coming on. And for everybody else, we'll see you on the next one.